So you're looking to get into resin 3D printing, but you're not really sure what all you're going to need to get started. Well, I got you covered. In today's video, we're going to cover the basics of what you're going to need to get started with resin 3D printing. So like I said, we're going to cover the basics of what you need, the necessities. This is my list of things that I think that you should just get right out the gate, have the minute that you start printing. I'm going to do another video down the road, probably a few of them actually, but I'll probably do another video that's a little bit more like the extras, the things that you really might want to get, but they're kind of luxuries. They're not necessities. This is the list of when you're going to go and buy things. This is what you need. And the other bonus of this video, I'm going to break down the cost. All right, so you have a kind of an idea. There's ranges, especially depending on the printer that you buy and things like that. But we'll kind of cover, how much are you looking to invest just to kind of get going, the necessities. So what I decided to do is kind of categorize some things. We're going to break them into some groups. First thing is going to be safety. I think that's always the most important thing. Now, one thing that I'm going to mention, we will talk about this, but it's kind of a given that you're going to need to get a printer and resin. Okay, so I'm not going to go into much depth on that, and I'm not going to cover, the different printers that are out there. In our budget, the numbers, how much is this investment going to cost? I'm going to kind of give a range that's, I'd say, reasonable based on what, are some of the popular printers, but I'm not going to really, this is not going to be a which printer to buy type video. I just want to mention that, or which resin to use either. Those are just going to be some givens on this list. I want to cover all the other things that a lot of people probably don't either know about or didn't think about. All right, so first things first, let's get the safety equipment out of the way because it's the most important. So you're going to need gloves. You don't want to get this stuff on your hands, the resin or any of the chemicals that you may use. So nitrile gloves are what you should be using. That's for, picking up the prints for shorter periods of time, dealing with, alcohol or anything else like that. If you need to submerge your hands and you're scrubbing the parts or doing something where, your hands are going to be submerged or covered in liquid a lot, I would recommend getting some of these heavy duty ones. They're just going to protect you for longer, basically. They're thicker. And it's going to be a little bit better. Probably don't need these. Like normal tasks, you're not going to need something like this, but most of us have something like this around the house. And then the nitrile gloves, every time that you're working with the resins, you want to use those. Now, you want some safety glasses because this stuff, the resin could splash in your eyes or the alcohol, especially if you're brushing prints and doing stuff like that. You don't want stuff flinging in your eyes. It would really suck. It's not going to be fun. So, bare minimum, have something that's just going to shield your eyes. You might even want to get the goggle style ones just in case something, you don't want something dripping down into your eye either. These wouldn't protect you from that. But for the most part, you just want to make sure that, something's blocking your eyes so that you're not getting resin or chemicals in them. And then third, you don't want to be breathing the fumes from the resin or, the alcohol or any other chemicals. So you want to get a face mask, a respirator, but you want to make sure you don't want to just be using a particulate matter filter. All that does is filter out dust particles. You want to have the organic vapor cartridges. That's going to filter out the fumes so that you aren't breathing them the whole time. And especially if you're in a pretty confined space that doesn't really get fresh air in it, you really want to be wearing a mask the whole time. You just don't want to be breathing this stuff, especially for long periods of time. So again, make sure you're getting the right cartridges and everything fits on the mask, and you should be pretty safe, once you have these things, and always wear these when you're working with these resins. All right, so the second category of things that you're going to need are cleanup supplies. This is a pretty big part of resin 3D printing, I've found. After every print is done, you need to clean off the prints, and you're going to be cleaning off any uncured resin, off of it. You kind of make a mess everywhere because you're cleaning prints and moving them, and it's liquid. So you're going to need some supplies. You're going to need some alcohol. I've been using denatured alcohol. I have some isopropyl on the way, but I just could get this faster. This works okay. I'm going to see how the isopropyl works. I don't really think there's a big difference. But either way, you're going to need something that's actually going to break down the actual resin. This stuff is like a solvent for it, for the uncured resin. So alcohol, you're going to need buckets of some sort to, you know, hold your alcohol in and also be able to kind of wash your prints off with. There's different sizes depending on what types of things you're printing. These smaller ones are great. The big ones require quite a bit of alcohol. So, you know, you got to kind of think about, you know, how much do you need and how much do you really want to, you know, put in, you know, your big tub. The big ones are much easier to work with, I think. But you also, you know, that alcohol gets kind of funky after a while. And so, you know, the more alcohol that you've got in a big bucket, the more contaminated it gets, or the more that will get contaminated, I should say. So anyway, buckets to hold your alcohol. You're going to need lots of paper towels, okay? So I would try and find the cheapest deal you can find and stock up a little bit because, you know, you're kind of wiping a lot of things off. The build plate needs to be kind of wiped down sometimes. If you drip anywhere, obviously, you're going to need to clean it up. So paper towels are a good thing to have on hand. And the other thing, and I've already mentioned this in the 5 tips for resin 3D printing video that I did, you're going to want some non-abrasive wipes. You really can't wipe off your FEP sheet, the bottom of the vat that holds the resin on your printer. This stuff will, you know, paper towels, normal ones, will scratch that, and you don't want to do that. So I found some of these, I don't know, scrub reusable wipes, they say. These are going to be kind of disposable, though. You're going to be wiping out any resin or anything in your vat. I usually just get rid of it and then grab a new one. But you get a pretty big pack of these things, and I just cut them into small strips so I can just clean up any alcohol or whatever's going on that vat, you know, with as little as possible. But you're going to want some of those. Also, if you have to clean off the LCD screen, you're going to want something that's non-scratch as well. The other thing that's really handy, I don't know if this is super necessary, but I use it all the time, is a squeeze bottle. That way I can hold the alcohol. You could, you know, like spray down your parts if you wanted to do it that way. I've seen a lot of other people use actual spray bottles on their parts. So either a spray bottle or some sort of a squeeze bottle is a really good thing to have. And the last thing is brushes, because you're going to need to kind of brush off some of the, you know, resin off the prints and cleaning out the vat. These little brushes help. Some of the resins actually come with brushes, so you might be able to kind of, that's what these are. I went and just bought a paintbrush as well. So we're going to kind of try a few different things, but you're going to want something to brush off your prints. Even an old toothbrush would work pretty well if you have any of those around, or you can get a cheap one. So some sort of a brush to, like I said, clean off parts and clean up after, you know, any spills. All right, so the third category is tools and supplies, I'm calling it. And these are just kind of little accessories and things. So number one, you're going to need these paint strainers and a funnel as well to go with the paint strainer. Every time you dump the resin from your vat back into one of the bottles of resin, you want to make sure you're straining it. And if you get a failed print, or if it's been sitting in the tank for, you know, days, you just left it there, you always want to strain that out, because there could be little half-cured chunks of resin or fully cured chunks that you do not want to be dumping back in that main bottle. You want to make sure that, you know, the bottle that you just pour the resin out of is always clean. So make sure to have these two things. You're going to need a metal scraper. Most printers come with these at this point, but you may find one that's better at doing the job. This one came with my printer and it works fine. This is to get your prints off of the print bed. So you're going to kind of, you know, scrape them off and pop them off of that bed. So that's a necessity. Something that I'm considering a necessity at this point is a silicone spatula. I use this to clean out the vat. If you need to, you know, search around or mix up your resin in the vat, this can be, you know, basically scraped along the FEP sheet and not damage it. It's nice and soft, and it's not going to, you know, scratch it or dent it or do anything like that. This, I think, is a must-have, and I even actually have a couple different sizes. I have a really small one that I use to just mix up resin. A lot of times the resin just needs a little bit of stirring before you print, especially if it's been sitting, you know, maybe in the vat for a day or something overnight. Not a bad idea to stir it up a little bit. This is a little bit clunky to kind of do that. It could work, but I have a smaller one. Now, second to last, I think that this is something that everybody, when you start, should have, is a silicone mat or a few. These are great for two things. One, they're perfect for working on. So when the prints are done, I take them off. wash them off a little bit, and then to scrape them off, I actually just, stick them on this thing on the build plate and hold it there. It contains all the mess. I don't get it all over my work, desks and all that kind of stuff, work tables. So it's a great thing. I even let things dry on them. It's just I literally would get a couple for working on. The other thing that I use these for is I actually put my printers on, I have 2 printers. I have 1 printer on, each on one of these silicone mats, just in case. And this is not totally likely, but it can definitely happen. If for some reason your FEP sheet, the vat, started leaking, it would leak all over the place if your printer was just sitting there. And I go home at night, and so I'm not even around. And even if you are printing at home, you're pretty close to it. It's not like you're necessarily going to watch a print, especially one that's going for 8 hours every minute. So I put the printer on this, and if it does happen to leak, it's going to be contained in this silicone mat, not all over the workshop. Now, the last thing on this list is extra FEP sheets. These things are, consumable anyway, even if you're super careful, but it's pretty easy to scratch them, to dent them, and possibly even to puncture them. What we were just talking about, if you puncture the FEP sheet, your resin's going to leak. So these things happen. They're a consumable item, so I would recommend just getting them right off the bat when you buy your printer. Get some extras so you have them on hand. All right, now one last little side note. This is more definitely in the luxury category, I would say, and it should probably be in that video. However, I think there's some circumstances where this might become kind of a necessity for some people. This is a wash and cure station. It's going to cost money, so an added cost right off the bat. But this thing's great because you can just take the build plate off of your printer and stick it in there. It's made to hold it. This is the Elegoo Mercury X. It's made to either hold a full Saturn build plate or 2 Mars build plates, and it's like totally set up to hold these things perfectly. You push the button, it has a timer, and it starts a propeller that's in the bucket, and it creates a current and cleans your prints off. It is fabulous. It significantly cuts down the time that I have to sit there and clean things off. A lot of times you don't even really need to. Depending on how clean your prints need to be, if you're trying to create like miniatures and like replica things that need to be like perfect, you're gonna have to do probably a lot more cleanup than I do. I'm making things that I cast in resin and then turn and sand and polish. These things don't need to be perfect. Like if there's like a little bit of a blemish on it, nobody's gonna see it, kind of thing. But if you're making a statue, those things can matter. Now with the cure station, the beauty of this thing is you have total control over everything. You don't have to worry about is the sun out or not, or is it nighttime or not. And you don't have to come up with some elaborate UV, curing light, setup. It's made to do this. It has a rotating table. It's a really awesome deal. And in some cases, some people may find this to be kind of a necessity. The nice thing about having ultimate control is you can over-cure prints. If you do that, they can turn yellow, they can get harder and more brittle. So this thing gives you full control, and depending on what you're trying to do, it may actually be kind of a necessity. I don't know that the washing station is a necessity for most people. You can scrub and brush, and it's, that's fine, and just a bucket of alcohol with a brush. So I don't know if this is a necessity, but the curing part kind of might be. So just something to think about. This is kind of an added little bonus. I'm going to have another video that has like, luxury items, things that you really don't necessarily need, but, could make, some people might like or want. So that'll be coming soon down the road. So there's my list of things that I think that you're going to want right off the bat if you're getting into resin 3D printing. I know that I use these things daily, and I wish if I didn't have them when I started, I wish that I would have. So all the links are down in the description below. I'm pretty sure all of those things I got on Amazon, so it's kind of a one-stop shopping type deal. And they're affiliate links, so I appreciate you guys using my affiliate links. It doesn't cost you a dime. All it's doing is if you hit my link, it's telling Amazon that I sent you over, and they give me a referral bonus. So you're supporting the show and getting your shopping done. So I appreciate all that support, guys. This list is based on, my experience. I just want to mention that and the way that I do things. So I wanted to ask you guys, is there anything that I missed that you think should have been on this list? I'm sure that there might be, especially depending on what types of things people are doing or how they do them. Let me know if I missed anything, or, especially if there's something that I should be, using with my resin 3D printing. make sure to put that down in the comments below so we all know. So let's talk about how much is it going to cost you to get into resin 3D printing. And I think a conservative estimate is somewhere between, maybe $300 to $400 at the low end, and maybe $800 to $1,000. And I mean, realistically, it could go to many thousands depending on what printer you buy. But I think you can get a printer for like around, at the cheapest level, somewhere around $150. Just to give you guys an example, I have a Saturn from Elegoo and an Elegoo Mars 2 Pro. The Saturn was somewhere around 500, maybe 550. The prices fluctuate on these things quite a bit, so kind of keep your eyes on them. But I think you're looking at about $500 for a Saturn, and the Mars 2 Pro is about $250, somewhere around there. So, and I think that's kind of, depending on which size people go with, that's kind of what that range, that's what most people are kind of getting, especially getting into it. So at the low end, if you get kind of a lower end, $150, maybe $200 printer, I think you're looking at maybe about $400 to get started. If you go with maybe a Mars, or not a Mars, a Saturn, and size, there's all kinds of different brands. I'm just using these as examples. But if you go with a larger size printer or a more expensive one, plus you get the wash and cure station, I mean, you might be creeping up at about $800 to $1,000, somewhere around there. So, it costs money to play, like everything else, but I don't think it's that unreasonable, especially if you're getting kind of one of the smaller printers, a couple $100, and then some supplies. And you can even knock some of these things out. This is assuming that you buy every single one of these things on the list. Most people have paper towels, so you can probably get rid of that cost. Gloves, you might have them already. You might even have silicone spatulas. So, some of these things may not actually add up. So there's a little bit of a range, but I think $300 or $400 at the low end, up to maybe $800. It's a pretty good range. So anyway, I hope this video was helpful for you guys. If it was, hit that like button down below. That helps out a ton with the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any upcoming videos or live streams. We live stream on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time and Saturday at noon Pacific time. So resin casting on Wednesdays, and then we work on the projects, the blanks that we make on Saturday, usually a turning project. So we'd love to have you out if you have time to stop by. But I think that's about it, guys. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.